A lion escaped from the zoo, but he wasn't looking to hunt and he wasn't running wild. He walked miles through empty streets, past cars and houses with one purpose in his heart: to find the only person he'd ever called family. When the door opened and their eyes met under the porch light, what happened next left an entire city speechless. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. In a quiet corner of the Willow Ridge Zoo, surrounded by leafy trees and the chatter of school children on field trips, lived a lioness named Mira. She was old now, her golden fur dulled slightly with age, but her eyes still carried the calm strength of a leader. Mira wasn't just any lion, she was the heart of the zoo. For nearly 15 years she had ruled the lion enclosure with quiet grace. Visitors would often stop and stare, feeling something almost royal about her. The staff called her the matriarch. Every morning Mira would rise slowly, stretch her long limbs and walk along the edges of her enclosure, watching the world beyond the fence. She had seen many keepers come and go, many cubs grow into strong lions and move on. But Mira had always stayed. She was part of Willow Ridge, like the ancient oak tree at the entrance or the mural of animals painted near the snack stand. One chilly morning in late September, something unusual happened. Dr. Amira Jalil, the head veterinarian, noticed something. In Mira's behavior, she was eating less, moving more slowly, and spending extra time in the shade. Concerned, she ran a full checkup. What she found shocked everyone. Mira was pregnant. "No way," whispered Olive, one of the senior caretakers. "She's too old, isn't she?" It was rare, almost unheard of, for a lioness of Mira's age to become pregnant. Yet the scans were clear. A small life was growing inside her. The zoo staff was amazed but also cautious. Mira had lived a full, healthy life, but now she would need extra care. Every day became a delicate balance of hope and worry. One of the new interns, a 23-year-old named Noah, had only been working at Willow Ridge for a few months. He had quiet eyes, gentle hands, and a natural way with animals. Though he was still learning the ropes, he quickly became a favorite among the animals and the staff. Noah was especially drawn to Mira. He would sit near her enclosure after his shift, reading quietly while she lay nearby, her ears twitching to the sound of his voice. Weeks passed. Autumn deepened, and the trees around the zoo turned orange and gold. The wind carried the scent of falling leaves, and the crowds began to thin. Mira moved less and slept more, but her eyes remained watchful. The staff prepared for the birth, building a warm, quiet space filled with straw in a corner of hair den. No one said it aloud, but they all knew this would likely be Mira's last cub. Then, on a soft, rainy morning, the sky covered in gray clouds, it happened. The zookeepers arrived to find Mira tucked deep in her straw bed, breathing slowly. Dr. Jalil stood by, whispering calm words as the hours passed. Finally, just after sunrise, a tiny cub entered the world. He was small, no larger than a house cat, with damp fur and closed eyes. His body trembled as he let out a tiny sound, more of a squeak than a roar. Noah was there, standing quietly behind the glass, his hands pressed together in silent prayer. The staff named the cub Tamu, a name meaning sweet in Swahili. It suited him well. But the joy was short-lived. Just a few hours later, Mira let out one final breath. She lay down beside her cub and closed her eyes. This time she did not wake. The room fell silent. Even the birds outside seemed to pause. For a long time no one spoke. Some of the keepers cried openly. Mira had been more than an animal. She was family. Her death felt like the end of an era. Tamu, now orphaned, was weak and cold. He couldn't feed on his own, and without Mira, his chances of survival were slim. Dr. Jalil called an emergency meeting. They needed someone to care for him, someone patient, gentle, and willing to give him constant attention. Noah raised his hand. "I'll do it," he said, voice steady but quiet. The staff turned toward him. Olive looked surprised, but then smiled. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This won't be easy." "I'm sure," he replied. "She trusted me. I won't let her cub down." After a quick but careful discussion, the team agreed. Noah would become Tamu's caregiver. That evening, he moved into a small room next to the animal hospital, bringing only a backpack and a blanket. He placed Tamu in a heated box lined with soft cloth and gently offered him a bottle of warm milk. The cub was too weak at first, but with Noah's soft humming and patient care, he began to drink. The first night was long. Every few hours Noah would feed Tamu, clean him, and whisper kind words. He sang softly when the cub cried. Tamu, though tiny and fragile, curled up against his chest, comforted by the steady heartbeat. Outside, the zoo was quiet. But inside, that little room, a new bond was being formed, one stronger than anyone could have imagined. And though no one knew it yet, this was only the beginning. Noah had always liked the quiet. Even as a child, he preferred listening to the soft rustle of trees or the hum of a fan to loud voices or busy places. So when he found himself caring for a tiny lion cub in a quiet room behind the animal hospital, it somehow felt right. Tamu, the little orphaned cub, had been in Noah's care for only a few days, but already, something powerful was growing between them. The cub, no bigger than a loaf of bread, was still weak. His eyes stayed shut most of the time, and his body often trembled even under a blanket. But every time Noah fed him or hummed softly into the night, Tamu responded. Barely, but enough. Noah kept to a strict routine. Every 3 hours, day and night, he warmed the milk, fed Tamu from a special bottle, cleaned his fur, and changed the bedding in his little nest. He spoke to him gently while working, telling him about the sky outside, about Mira, or about silly things like how much he missed eating warm toast. In the beginning, other staff checked in often. They were worried about both the cub and the intern. But Noah surprised them all. He never complained, never asked for a break. Even when his eyes were heavy with sleep, he smiled and whispered, "We're doing okay," as Tamu slowly began to grow stronger. Olive, the senior caretaker who had been with the zoo for over 20 years, watched from a distance. She had cared for Mira since the lioness was a young cub herself, and Mira's loss had hit her hard. At first, she was unsure about Noah. He was so new, so young, but as the days passed, Olive began stopping by more often, bringing fresh towels or bottles, sometimes just standing at the door, smiling quietly as Noah gently rocked the cub in his arms. "You're a natural," she finally said one evening. "Like Mira somehow knew to leave him with you." Noah looked down at the sleeping cub in his lap. "Maybe she did," he whispered. Weeks turned into months. Tamu opened his eyes, wide and amber like his mother's. He started to pounce, clumsy, at first, then with more confidence. He would chase after the edges of Noah's coat, nibble at his shoes, and even try to climb his chest when he wanted attention. The bond between them became something the entire zoo noticed. Visitors would often stop by Tamu's temporary enclosure, watching as Noah played with him under the trees or lay on the grass with the cub sprawled across his stomach. Photos of the two began to spread online. Tamu licking Noah's face, Tamu riding on his shoulders, Tamu falling asleep curled up like a kitten. "He thinks you're his mother," Olive said one afternoon, laughing as Tamu followed Noah like a shadow. "He probably does," Noah replied, half smiling. "And maybe, I feel like I'm his dad." Soon people from across the city came to the zoo just to see them. Headlines began to appear. "The Boy and the Lion, an Unbreakable Bond." A local news channel did a short story on them. Even children started sending drawings of Tamu and Noah, which were pinned up in the zoo's education center. But despite the attention, life was still far from easy. Tamu was growing fast. He ate more, played harder, and needed more space. The zoo staff began preparing a larger enclosure for him, and Noah helped design it, making sure it had shaded spots, soft grass, and climbing rocks. Then, everything changed. One stormy night, it started with dark clouds. Heavy rain fell quickly, followed by howling winds. Thunder boomed over the city, shaking windows and bending trees. At the zoo, several enclosures were damaged by falling branches and flying debris. The power flickered, and alarms echoed through the grounds. The zoo was shut down for safety, and staff were told to temporarily house certain animals at home, especially the young or vulnerable ones. Dr. Amira came to Noah with a question. "Can you take Tamu home with you for a few days?" Without hesitation, Noah nodded. Of course. He wrapped Tamu in a thick, warm blanket and carried him to his small car, shielding him from the rain. Tamu, now the size of a large dog, sat quietly in the back seat, peering out the window as lightning lit up the sky. Noah's cottage was modest, tucked along a quiet road with a garden full of herbs and ivy. He quickly turned his spare bedroom into a lion cub nursery, placing pillows on the floor, blocking sharp corners, and lighting a small heater in the corner. Tamu explored every inch, batting at cushions, pawing the curtains, and tipping over a potted plant. When he finally curled up by the fireplace, Noah sat beside him, smiling through tired eyes. For a whole week, they lived like family. Tamu followed Noah from room to room, napping at his feet while he read, and even watching cartoons with him on the couch. At night he curled up near the bed, letting out soft purrs that echoed through the house like a low lullaby. Noah knew this wouldn't last forever. Tamu belonged to the zoo, and maybe, one day, beyond the zoo. But for now, in the gentle warmth of that quiet home, they were just two souls helping each other heal, and neither of them wanted the moment to end. The storm passed, and slowly life at Willow Ridge Zoo returned to normal. Broken branches were cleared, fences repaired, and paths swept clean. The air smelled fresh again, and the sounds of children's laughter returned as families came to visit. It was time for Tamu to go back. Noah stood quietly as the zoo staff opened the gate to Tamu's new enclosure. It was much larger than before, with more space to run, rocks to climb, and shady spots to rest. They had done a good job, but as Noah stepped back, holding the empty blanket he had used to carry Tamu just days earlier, his chest felt heavy. Tamu stood just inside the gate, looking at Noah. His golden eyes searched his face, confused. He let out a low sound, half growl, half whine, then slowly padded toward a soft patch of grass and lay down, still watching. "He'll be okay," Olive said gently, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. "It just takes time." Noah nodded, but he wasn't so sure. At first, things seemed fine. Noah visited every morning before his shift and every evening before heading home. He would sit by the edge of the enclosure, play the lullabies Tamu loved, and bring his favorite snacks, chunks of chicken and soft pieces of fruit. Tamu would perk up as soon as he heard Noah's voice. He'd press his big body against the fence, purring and nudging at the bars, but as the days passed, it became clear that this was not the same as before. Tamu grew restless. He refused to eat from anyone else's hand. He paced in long, slow circles. His playful nature faded. The keepers noticed the change, and so did the visitors. "He's looking for you," one of the volunteers said, watching Tamu's eyes follow Noah as he walked away one afternoon. Noah didn't know what to do. He couldn't move back in with Tamu, not now that the cub had grown so big and strong. His place was here at the zoo, surrounded by trained staff and safe enclosures. But Noah's place, he wasn't sure anymore. Still, he kept visiting. Every day without fail, rain or shine. 3 years passed. Tamu became the pride of Willow Ridge. Now a full-grown lion, his mane had deepened in color, almost like a sunrise, golden with streaks of copper. He was powerful, beautiful, and admired by all. Children squealed with delight when he stepped into view. Tourists took hundreds of pictures. Reporters called him the King of Willow Ridge. But to Noah, he was still the little cub who used to fall asleep with his head on his chest. They remained close. Noah still spoke to him like he always had, still played the lullabies, still scratched behind his ears through the fence. And Tamu still responded, his growls softer, his eyes brighter when Noah appeared. Then one spring morning, things changed again. Noah woke with a burning fever and heavy limbs. His body ached and his head throbbed. Dr. Amira came to check on him and frowned. "You need full rest," she said. "No work, no visits, Just stay home and recover. Noah hated the thought of staying away from Tamu, even for a few days. But he nodded. "Tell him I'll be back soon," he said softly, not really expecting anyone to understand. But someone did understand. Tamu. The day Noah didn't show up, the big lion stopped eating. At first, the staff thought he was just being picky. But as the hours passed, they noticed something else. Tamu paced back and forth, nose pointed toward the path Noah usually walked. He let out long, low growls, not angry, but lost. His food was left untouched. He ignored his toys. He lay down near the bars of the enclosure facing the staff gate as if waiting. "Maybe he thinks Noah's gone for good," Olive said quietly, watching from a distance. What no one realized was that in all the shuffle of daily tasks, a small but serious mistake had been made. That morning, a young maintenance worker named Felix had cleaned Tamu's enclosure in a rush. He had been distracted, thinking about his lunch break. When he finished, he pulled the gate shut but didn't lock it properly. The hours passed. The sun dipped low. The zoo began closing for the day. Then, just after sunset, a shadow moved from the lion enclosure. Tamu, silent and steady, slipped through the unlatched gate and walked into the darkening zoo grounds. By the time Felix realized what had happened, it was too late. Panic spread fast. Sirens wailed. Lights flickered across the zoo. Staff ran to check other animals. The police were called, and soon, news of the missing lion was on every radio and phone alert in the city. But what everyone expected, roaring, damage, danger, did not happen. Instead, across quiet neighborhoods and sleeping streets, people began to report something strange. "There's a lion walking down Maple Avenue," one caller said, voice shaking. "He's not attacking anything," said another. "He's just walking." Footage began to appear online, grainy phone videos showing a lion calmly crossing sidewalks, stopping at corners, and looking around like he was searching for something important. The city held its breath. Back at his small cottage, Noah was resting on the couch, a cup of tea in hand, when he heard a low rumble outside. He paused. His heart jumped. Slowly, he stood and walked to the window, and there, under the streetlight, stood Tamu, still, silent, and waiting. Noah could hardly believe what he was seeing. Outside his cottage, standing still under the golden porch light, was Tamu. The same lion he had fed from a bottle, rocked to sleep as a cub, and raised with gentle care. Now fully grown, with a thick, shimmering mane and strong shoulders, he looked like a creature from a dream. But his eyes, those soft, searching eyes, were the same. Noah opened the door slowly, stepping barefoot onto the cool grass. He could hear his own heartbeat as he walked forward, unsure if this was real. Tamu didn't move. He stood tall, but calm, his eyes locked on Noah's face. A low rumble came from deep within Tamu's chest, a sound of recognition, a sound of home. "Tamu," Noah whispered, his voice shaking. The lion lowered his head slightly and took one slow step forward. Noah stopped a few feet away. Tears welled in his eyes. He reached out a hand. Tamu moved closer, until his broad head pressed gently into Noah's palm. "You found me," Noah whispered, brushing his fingers through Tamu's thick mane. "You really found me." In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the news reports, not the sirens in the distance, not the zoo or the rules or the fear. It was just them, two hearts that had never truly been apart. Minutes later, police cars and zoo trucks began to arrive. Bright lights lit up the street. Neighbors peeked out from windows. A crowd slowly formed, but no one dared come too close. They watched in silence as the young man and the lion stood together in the yard, wrapped in a moment too beautiful to disturb. Olive was the first to step forward. She had followed the reports and rushed over as soon as she heard where Tamu had gone. "I knew he'd come here," she said softly, tears in her eyes. Zoo staff carefully set up a transport cage near the cottage, but they didn't rush. No tranquilizers, No loud voices. They knew this was different. This wasn't a rescue. This was a return. Noah led Tamu to the open crate himself, speaking softly the whole time. Tamu followed without fear, his eyes never leaving Noah's. Inside the cage, he lay down peacefully. As the gate closed, Noah sat beside him, holding his paw through the bars. The trip back to Willow Ridge Zoo was quiet. Noah stayed beside the cage the entire time. When they arrived, Tamu was given a full health check. No injuries, no signs of aggression, just emotional exhaustion. He was safe, and most of all, he was home. The story spread like wildfire. Lion escapes zoo, walks miles to find the man who raised him. Pictures of Noah and Tamu's reunion were printed in newspapers and posted across social media. News channels covered it for days. But even with all the attention, Noah remained humble. "I didn't do anything special," he told a reporter during an interview. "I just loved him, and he loved me back." Soon, Noah was invited to speak at schools, wildlife events, and even on television. He talked about the emotional connections animals can form, about trust, and about kindness. He never called himself a hero. He always gave credit to Tamu. Meanwhile, back at the zoo, things changed. Tamu's enclosure was expanded to twice its size. Natural features were added: trees, climbing rocks, and even a small waterfall. Visitors lined up to see the lion who followed his heart. But Noah knew this wasn't the end of their story. One afternoon, Dr. Amira and Olive called him in for a special meeting. A wildlife sanctuary in a vast, protected reserve had heard about Tamu and offered a life-changing opportunity, a gradual transition from zoo life to the wild. The reserve, located deep in a forested valley, was home to several animals that had once lived in human care. It was safe, carefully monitored, and filled with open space, perfect for a lion ready to live freely. Noah was quiet for a long moment. "He belongs under the sky," he finally said. "But I'd like to help him get there." The zoo agreed, and so began a new chapter. Noah and Tamu traveled together to the reserve. Over the course of a year, they trained daily, Noah helping Tamu learn how to explore, stalk, and survive without constant care. At first it was hard. Tamu still followed Noah closely, unsure about hunting or being alone. But slowly, instinct returned. He climbed higher, ran faster, and began to chase shadows in the tall grass. He even roared, long and loud, sending birds into the sky. Noah smiled every time. A documentary crew filmed the entire journey. People around the world watched the transformation of a lion who once slept beside a fireplace, now standing proud in open wilderness. One day, the time came. Tamu stood at the edge of the trees. The gate behind him was open. The sky above stretched, wide and blue. Noah knelt by his side, stroking his mane one last time. "You're ready," he whispered. Tamu turned his head, their eyes meeting in a final silent goodbye. Then, without hesitation, he stepped into the forest, vanishing between the trees. Noah didn't cry. Not this time. He smiled, heart full. Back at Willow Ridge Zoo, a small plaque was placed near the lion enclosure. It read, "In honor of Tamu and the boy who became his family, a story of courage, connection, and letting go." And every now and then, a child would ask who Tamu was. And someone nearby would smile and say, "He was the lion with the biggest heart and the one who walked home."